Hi, my name is Rita Costa and I'm a data visualization engineer at Feedzai. And today I will talk to you about how to design accessible charts for the web. So something that it's important to state from the beginning is that there is no single right answer on how to implement accessible charts for the web. It heavily depends on the technology that you are using, the message that you want to convey, how autonomous you believe your users should be when interacting with your charts. There are some good practices that you can adopt in order to ensure that the widest possible group of people and different groups of people can access your charts on the web. So something that we are probably all aware, especially people working in the data visualization field, is that we are in this golden era of information graphics where graphics are seen everywhere in a variety of formats to convey a wide range of information and with very different shapes and formats. They are the product of the effort of their developers to make complex information more understandable in a way, and arguably to people that can see. Because the big problem with many of these charts is that they're not accessible to non-sighted users. So people that need the screen readers, which is a type of assistive technology, to understand what is on the web. And we know because there are studies on this topic, specifically the study done by Adar Sharif from the University of Washington, that screen reader users are around 60% less accurate to interpret a visualization and take 200% more time than their sighted peers to interact with it. And this is mainly due to the fact that these charts that exist on the web are not created with accessibility in mind. And so when this assistive technology gets to these charts when the user is navigating a page, the big chances are that the screen reader doesn't know how to interpret what's there. So there are some ways that we can ensure that the screen reader conveys at least some information to the screen reader users, and that the key message of the chart is transmitted to whoever is using this type of technology. So yeah, how can we ensure that people using this technology can have a similar experience as a sighted user? There are a set of varied ways and representations that charts can have on the web. They can be your images, which are the JPEGs and the PNGs, or they can be the vectorized images that are represented in HTML by the SVG. They can also be canvas, but we won't cover that on this topic. And both the image tags or the SVG tags have different elements and attributes that we can leverage to increase the accessibility of these elements. And what I'm talking about today is how can we make the images and SVGs more accessible. So starting with the image elements, which are more restricted in the type of implementations that we can make, one of the most important ways that we can, or one of the most important features that we can use to make them accessible is the alternative text. And the alternative text is an attribute that is represented by the alt keyword. And basically what it does is it is read by screen readers in place of images. And in this way, it allows the content and function of the image to be accessible to those with visual or certain cognitive disabilities. It has other benefits, namely the fact that it is what is displayed in place of an image in case that it doesn't render on a website. And it also provides semantic meaning and descriptions that can be used by search engines and But how do we make good alt text for visualization? So we know that a chart is a different image from a photograph, and how can we describe it in a way that is useful for screen reader users encountering a chart that is represented by, well, that is an image on the web. Amy Seasall has a great article on this on the Nightingale magazine website. But the idea is that we need to think of the alt text as like a summarized description of what is on the chart. But it's not like a description that was not thought about. Is a thoughtful description of the message that we want to convey with the chart. So it should be short in order to not overwhelm the user with a lot of information at once, but it should also be descriptive in the sense that, well, it's describing what's on the image, but also informative. So if there is a takeaway on the chart that you want your readers to take from it, it should also be obvious on the alternative text that is being used to describe the image. This is just an example of what alt text can look like for a chart on the web. This is a chart that was published in a Portuguese newspaper, Público, a few weeks ago, and this is a possible implementation of what alt text could look like for that chart. So we say what type of chart we're looking at. Of course, for some users, this information will be meaningless because they don't really know how a line chart looks like, but it's important to contextualize what this is in terms of the visual aspect, because it also helps them when communicating with sighted users or people that can perceive a line chart. So we say that it's a line chart. We also describe what is the data that it is conveyed on this chart. So in this case, unemployment in the tourism sector in Portugal, and we communicate very clearly the takeaway. So the fact that the rate of unemployment in the sector dropped since 2020 after a spike in 2019. And this is also something that is not very obviously conveyed on the title, but the user or the reader can perceive it visually, whereas a screen reader user cannot, and we need to state this information very clearly. Apart from the very important alt text, what we can also do is adding a long description, and the long description attribute takes either an ID for another HTML element on the page or an URL to other page elsewhere where the long description lives and further details are available. And this can be more details to describe trends in the data, additional context that might be worth mentioning, or even a link to the data. Another thing that we can do with the image attributes is, well, actually adding a data table, because the charts that are represented with images are not accessible, people can't go through each of the elements like we can with SVGs, and you are going to see and navigate through the data. Including a data table is a good way to empower users to do their own explorations instead of just relying on the alt text or the long description that you are providing. Nevertheless, having the data table is not a replacement for the other accessibility considerations. It should be an addition because it does allow people to explore the raw data, but it doesn't really provide an understanding of insights and trends that the visualizations uncover. So these are the main things that we can do with the image, with the charts that are images. What can we do with the SVGs? So with SVGs, we cannot add alternative text and we cannot add the long descriptions, but we can actually do much more with SVGs than we can with the images, and I'll try to give some examples of things that we can do. This is not the full list of things that is possible to do in terms of implementing accessibility in SVGs, but it's some approaches that we can take to make charts more perceivable to the assistive technology. One of the main things that we can do with SVG is leveraging the ARIA attribute. attributes. And the ARIA attributes are accessible, rich internet applications that define a way to make web content and web applications more accessible to people with disabilities. It helps especially with dynamic content and advanced user interface that controls user interface controls, developed with HTML, JavaScript, and other related technologies. How can we use ARIA in our chart? So there's a variety of ARIA attributes. It's a long list, and these are just some examples of some ARIA attributes that we can use in our charts to make them more accessible. I will use throughout these examples some screenshots of a project that I've worked on called Flags of Inequality, and I'll try to exemplify how can these look like within the context of this project. So the first attribute that we can use, or one of the many attributes that we can use, but one of the most used and one of the more relevant is the ARIA label. And the ARIA label can be used to label any element, either the main SVG to describe the chart overall, like we do with alt text, or the element inside to provide more information about a single data point. In this example here, we are using the ARIA label to inform the screen reader of what this SVG is representing. In this case, it's representing an element that is standing for the Portugal, and it's a kind of it's a flag, and where Portugal is the number 11 in the global ranking, where the coverage of LGBTQ+ rights is X out of 600 possible points. Additionally, and because the ARIA label is not exclusive of this particular SVG element, we can also use it within other elements inside the SVG, namely the rect element, where we are using it to label more granularly the specific rectangle or the specific flag stripe that is represented here in purple. Other things that we can use is the role and the ARIA role description. So the role attribute is used to instruct the assistive technology how to treat a specific element, and it's a set list of roles that we can assign. In this case, we are using the graphic symbol, and then it can be paired with the ARIA role description to provide additional details to locate the user within the chart. And in this context, or with the ARIA role description, we can use a natural language, any sort of description to describe this particular element. So we are using flag stripe. If it's your usual bar chart, you can call it bar. If it's a line chart, you can say line. So to explain where the user is in a specific context. The other thing that we can also use is leveraging ARIA to hide things from the screen reader. So we don't always want everything to be read for the screen reader, by the screen reader. And so sometimes we need to hide stuff because it makes sense visually, but it will just confuse the users if we expose it to the screen reader. And so if you notice in the first example, I'm saying here that Portugal is the number 11 in this global ranking. So I don't really need the information that is here to be read again by the screen reader. It will just confuse the users. So what I can do is to just add the ARIA ident tag, and it will, well, obviously hide this from the screen reader. Something else that is no longer in the realm of the ARIA attributes, and it's important to increase the navigability of a visualization or a set of visualizations, is leveraging the tab index attribute. This is an attribute that allows an HTML element to receive focus and be accessible via keyboard. It should usually have a value of 0 to be navigable by the order in which the elements appear on the page. In this case, because we want the elements to be navigable, we are adding tab index to all of these flags, and the label changes, as you can see. So the user is going through each of these flags. Additionally, so apart from the code implementations and the varied things that you can do with code, it's always worth mentioning that you should be testing, and you should be testing in a variety of ways. So trying the visualization and your accessible implementation with different screen reader types is really important. So we know that different screen reader technologies will operate in slightly different ways and might lead to slightly different results. Also trying with different browsers to make sure that things are working seamlessly, like you would with an implementation of a visualization that you want to be consumed across the web. And also testing with users with different disabilities in order to understand if you are if you are implementing accessibility that fits a broader set of needs. And yeah, these are some considerations and some approaches to addressing accessibility in the charts that you're making for the web. Here are some useful resources that have helped me and my colleagues in the past. I hope they are useful. Yeah, thank you so much.